A book? What do you want a book for?
To read.
To read? Why would you want to read when you got the television set sitting right in front of you?
Okay, y'all, we are back for another back to school season episode. We're taking quite the turn with this one because we just came off recording Superbad, and we have a first timer guest on this episode. And before we jumped on this morning, I was just thinking of all the reasons why Kat is the perfect guest for this episode. She is a part owner of a dance studio, and she is the head of the theater program there. So she really is a real life Miss Honey, even though she's dressed up as Miss Trunchbull. She hosts tea parties at her house, but also I had no idea that she had such an affinity for this film because she previously showed up to a Halloween party dressed as Miss Trunchbull. So she's graced us with her presence this morning in the 1975 Olympics sweatshirt. So Kat, welcome to the pod. Oh, 1972. Okay, clearly not a sporty girl. We're so happy to have you. This is great.
Thank you for that warm welcome. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Matilda was definitely one of my family favorites growing up, so it's an honor.
You know, this is one of those movies that I think in my mind, it was like, I didn't know that everyone else loved it. I always thought that it was more of like just my family and my cousins thing. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, wow, so many people really do love this movie and really did grow up watching it.
I think it was like we had maybe 10 VHSs, and that was one of the ones that we had.
I don't know, Michelle, if we own this on VHS.
Oh, it would be weird to me if we didn't, but you're right. I don't have a memory of the physical case.
It's a very chaotic VHS cover.
It sure is.
Which kind of ties back to the movie. Kat, so if you grew up watching this movie, do you have any like distinct memories of who you used to watch this with, or was it just like constantly on in your home?
Definitely with my siblings. I don't have a memory of like the first time that I watched it, but it was definitely one that my siblings and I would just throw on anytime when we wanted to have a good time. I feel like we always, pretended like we were Matilda. We pretended that we had powers and, so we were always into the magic of it.
I think watching this time around, I was like, oh, this is really so heartwarming. It has some really great messages in it, which I'm like happy we grew up watching this movie in a way.
But I will say this time around, I did notice for the first time that she was insinuating that Miss Trunchbull actually killed Magnus.
I know. Did either of you grow up reading Roald Dahl books?
I read a lot, but I really didn't grow up actually reading any Roald Dahl. I don't think I've read a single one actually.
Yeah, I don't think that we owned it either, but I feel like with all children's books that become movies, there's always dark tones. There's always some dark undertones. They try and keep it light with the tea parties, but it just ends up getting crazy. Michelle, what about you? This is a movie that I don't think that we really bonded over, but we both enjoyed.
Yeah, I'd say this story is really important to me. I did grow up reading Roald Dahl. My second grade teacher, Mrs. Baskin, read us Charlie and the Chocolate Factory from beginning to end. And I think that was the first time anyone read me a chapter book. And I remember being so excited to go back to school every day and to like have her read the next chapter. So that was kind of my introduction to his world. It must have been maybe the year after that, third grade, that I read Matilda. And I have this very specific memory of the moment when the reveal happened that Miss Honey was Miss Trunchbull's niece. And my mind was like absolutely blown. I was like flabbergasted. Completely took me by surprise. I, in my mind, like pinpoint that as like the first time a twist like that impacted me where I just completely didn't see it coming. So I'm assuming different than you two because Kat, were you also born in 93 like Laura?
92, but yeah.
92. Okay. So you guys were, 3 and 4 when this movie came out. I read the book first, and then the movie didn't come out until years after for me in my timeline. So it was also, I think, one of the first experiences I had of seeing a book that I had read then come out as a movie versus, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory kind of already existed in tandem when I was first experiencing that story. So that I think was also kind of cool to be excited to see how they brought this story to the screen, even though by the time it came out in 96, I was like 13. But Laura, it's funny that you said that you don't really connect this with me or with our family, or maybe just with me, but because I feel like, especially as I was watching this yesterday, I was just thinking about our family and our cousins, James and Danielle and Denise. Every quote made me think of them. And I think that this must have been one of those movies that we watched because we were together a lot in the summers. We vacationed with them that just got played on repeat. So maybe they had the tape.
This is no beef with you. I think that we were just in different, like, very different ages when this movie was like hot for us. So I mostly associate this with Denise and our cousins and like quoting it with them. And you were probably like reading books. So
yeah, but I do remember being excited to see this. And I don't know, I'll have to fact check this with our other sisters and our cousins, but did we see this with them in the movies?
I don't know. I would have only been, I was like really young. So you guys probably left me at home if you went.
To call James out, our cousin James, who's kind of like in between mine and Laura's age, I have this memory of James being really afraid in the movie theater and maybe needing to leave when the Trunchbull went the scene in the house.
Yes.
I don't know why that's like a very specific memory for me. So I don't know if I was there when it happened or if we just talked about that a lot.
Yeah. Kat, in addition to you and your siblings like reenacting Matilda and reading books and using superpowers, were you all deathly afraid of Miss Trunchbull?
Oh yeah, I mean the Chokey was the most horrifying thing that you could ever think of. Like,
absolutely horrific.
Nightmares.
I
Absolutely.
think that this movie is the reason why I was afraid to go into our basement.
Oh yeah,
because of her basement. Terrifying. I think it started the fear of big houses for me.
I didn't know that was a fear of yours.
Much more of a big old houses and scary movies that take place in big old houses. Okay. It's like the childhood version. I'm much more of a cottage gal. The Miss Honey.
Miss Honey's cottage.
Yes. But yeah, that's amazing, Michelle. I didn't know. Again, I think watching this movie, I didn't put two and two together that it was even from a book because I feel like when you're that young, you're not really thinking about it as much. So I'm sure it was like really exciting. You said Miss Baskin was your teacher? Was she a Miss Honey character? Was she a sweet lady?
I would not say she had Miss Honey energy, but she was, I would rank her in my like top 2 or 3 teachers of all schooling. She was really great, really creative. And I think that she reminded me, Laura, of our Aunt Amanda. Like, even like, I'm not just saying that in reflecting, like at the time, I remember always telling Mom that she reminded me of Aunt Amanda, which is, I think, why I loved her so much.
Yeah. Kat, did you have a teacher specifically in like elementary school that was like a Miss Honey energy?
Weirdly, yes, but he was a man.
I love that. Oh, that's even better.
It's so funny that you asked me that because after watching this the other night, it made me think of my 3rd grade teacher, Terry Moore. If you're out there, I tried to look him up because I wanted to like reach out to him and be like, yo,
Terry,
you're such a great teacher and I'm an adult now, but thank you. But I just remember that was 3rd grade. That was also, I think, the first time that I had like a chapter book read to me from start to finish. And the stories that he shared in class with us are some of the ones that have stuck with me the longest and I think contributed to some of the values that I still hold today. And he was just the best. He was just this old hippie dude and I have such fond memories of him.
We love our teachers.
I know. Yeah. This is a teacher appreciation pod, but also season because of the back to school scene. So shout out to all the teachers who are probably in the thick of it right now when this, this is going to be dropping in October, but we appreciate you. I know I've always found it really special as when you're an adult and people can look back and be able to talk about teachers who like still have an impact on them today. So
Yeah.
I have to shout out, like, our Nanuet school district had wonderful teachers. I remember my kindergarten teacher, Miss O'Hara, was, I think Matilda would have been in what, like first grade or second grade, even though she seems a little bit older in this movie. But like when I think of elementary school, Miss O'Hara, she was just such a sweet kindergarten teacher. And I remember like being so excited to go to school as the, the youngest sibling that you guys all got to go. So I feel like I was feeling those Matilda, excitement to go to school. But the teacher that had, I think, the most impact on me was my 7th grade English teacher, shout out Mr. Cutler, who actually went to high school with my mom. So that was always fun, kind of like a funny joke between us that they like knew each other at different ages. But he had definitely a different approach to class. Like we weren't sitting there and just reading from a chalkboard. He made it more of a discussion forum, and we would just talk about, like, we read The Crucible and we had to like act it out, and we were having these really like intense discussions as 7th graders. And a lot of his projects that he made us do was just more creative writing and free writing. So he would give us like a prompt or a part of a story, and we had to finish it. And I still remember like turning in certain papers and him being like, this is really good, and then like work with me to adjust it. And I think that he kind of gave me like the push. Like I remember even going into college and taking writing courses and like getting similar feedback, and I think he like gave me the confidence or the bug that I still have for writing. So shout out to him. And I think like it's hard for teachers when they are tasked to follow such a curriculum to make it more of an engaging and exciting thing for especially middle schoolers to want to like go in and be excited to sit through English class. So
I also have Mr. Cutler and can back up everything you're saying about what an amazing teacher he was. But also wanted to use this opportunity to open this up to anyone listening to this, watching on YouTube or listening in the audio feed, to share with us memories of your favorite teacher and how they may have impacted you in terms of just things that you, like Kat said, like that kind of like shaped who you are, or that maybe in regards to this podcast, if they may have been ones to introduce you to a specific story or author or genre.
And Kat, I can only imagine I'm sure your students will be on podcasts at younger ages than we are, but I'm sure they're going to be shouting out Miss Kat, because I have seen Kat in action and she is an absolutely fantastic teacher. So you're definitely molding the minds of those kids.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. I think this is a great transition. Let's talk about what we loved about this movie. Michelle, I want to start with you, since you have, I think, the perspective of reading it first, and just like, what, if you remember seeing this for the first time, like what are some of the things that you loved and still holds up for you today?
I think first and foremost, this has less to do with the movie, but I think that this is a really good story. And I think that Matilda is a really strong, relatable character, especially for kids who like to read books. I obviously would never have been able to make this connection as a 3rd grader, but I didn't grow up in a household like the Wormwoods household. But I think generally speaking, kids who love to read and love to go to school often do kind of feel a little bit alone. And I think that that's kind of like a big message of this, is that you can take comfort in the books that you read and go to all these different places through the experience of reading. I really liked Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman's involvement in this. I think that they, along with Miss Trunchbull, win this movie. Longtime listeners are sick of hearing us say this every episode, but Laura and I love like cartoon characters. We love when characters are just incredibly over the top. And I think of every movie that we've covered so far, Harry and Zinnia Wormwood have to be at the top of that list of just being absolutely outrageous. Every scene that they were in made me laugh. Their costumes were phenomenal. I was telling Laura that I really wish that I had, again, I was wishing this for another episode, but like I needed like a red feather bow. I really wanted to dress up as Zinnia, but I don't have her aesthetic, sadly. And yeah, also I think Miss Trunchbull is a really strong character. She's a really unique villain. And I think in terms of at least what I remember from book to screen, she stayed almost exactly true to how I imagined her to be, with the exception of one of the things that I had really loved in her performance in this movie is that she brought so much humor to it. I don't remember her being as funny as a kid, because maybe I did, even though I was like 13. Maybe I was, like a little bit afraid of her still. But there were so many things between her kind of like, throwing darts at the kids' photos on the back of her door. And even the scenes where we see her in her house kind of by herself, all of the things that she does are very much in support of who she is. Like, she's not like putting on an act when she's with other people. Like, she is truly like that all the time. And it's fantastic.
I can't agree more. I was thinking about specifically the scene where she is throwing the javelin like at her wall when Matilda like is breaking in at night, and she's just terrifying. She clearly just is throwing things at all times of the day. Kat, what about you?
I mean, echoing everything that Michelle just said, I mean, the physical comedy that that actress had was just incredible. Thinking about her wandering through the house as Matilda's haunting her. I know you said your cousin may have been scared at that scene, but like I remember laughing hysterically at that scene because I was like, yeah, get her, Matilda. Like the fear in her eyes was just so palpable, and you were rooting for that because she was the villain. And what you said about like Harry and Zinnia, so accurate. Zinnia's accent is so incredible. Like, I just want to keep hearing her speak. It is just too funny. It's too good. I mean, I have such vivid memories too of the game show. They're like sitting in front of the TV. It's like a yellow glaze over the film, and the sticky game show. I was like, that is so disgusting. And they're just like, yeah, get it. Like, oh my gosh. There's just so many elements of this movie that are just so smart and well thought of. And I have such visceral memories too of the soundtrack, like Send Me on My Way. That's definitely the first time I ever heard that song. And every time I hear it to this day, I think of Matilda making herself breakfast at the age of 4, and Little Bitty Pretty One when she finally learns how to use her magic. It's just so many fun moments. I think one of my favorite things too on this rewatch that like I didn't notice as a kid, but I noticed now was how the camera angle when it was trying to portray Matilda's perspective was like completely from the bottom up. You're looking like up at whatever she's looking at, and it's like almost in 0.5 so that it really magnifies the middle and distorts the edges. So you get those close-ups on Miss Trunchbull's face, and you've got the big nose and the hairy mole and whatever's going on there. Or even when she walks into the library and like she's looking up at that huge pedestal and the sweet little librarian, like still from her perspective, it's like she's just so small and she wants to be big like everybody else. It's just, I thought that was such a clever way of showing the audience like what it was like to be Matilda.
It's so funny you say that because I remember growing up and being like, wow, that's a really tall library stand. But, this is, I would say, a movie made for kids, and it has really just beautiful messaging, kind of what we were talking about of like teachers that we had, but like messages that we can carry. Like Michelle, the part that you're saying of like, you're not alone. They use that line when she's just sitting in the park, like reading by herself. And I was like, my God, I'm a little emotional right now. I'm not expecting this. But yeah, I think for the fact that Danny DeVito was one of the directors on this and the producer, you can tell there's a lot of thought and just amazing elements to this movie instead of just being like a quick adaptation of a book. Aside from the costumes, well, first, did each of you have a favorite costume?
I really liked the costume that Zinnia wore when they went to Cafe Loritz. It was kind of a red dress, and I think that's when she kind of had like a feather accent around the neck. But I also really liked, I think, one of her bingo outfits where she had the visor. I liked that one too.
All the Zinnia ones were just so fantastic. I think the ones you highlighted are definitely two of the standouts. But I also, as a teacher now, I think I love seeing Miss Honey's like gentle, quiet, like floral, pastel pink. I think I'm really owning that in my older adult teacher life. Wore this really long, flowy floral dress to my class the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm like really owning theater teacher now.
Yes.
So, I loved seeing Miss Honey's as well, but they're obviously very different.
The Miss Honey aesthetic is really fantastic. It really plays into who she is. The Zinnia cheetah outfit that she has on, it's just it is her. I also realized Harry really leans into plaids in this movie, and it works out. Aside from the costumes, I could not get over how detailed the set design was in this movie. Who was responsible for coming up with this? Because there are so many things in the Wormwood house, and it just completely checks out to who they are as a family. But there is so much detail behind it. And I think even like Miss Honey's cottage and the Magnus estate, like there were all these really thoughtful details that was put into it, which I don't, unfortunately, I think like where we are now with a lot of like streaming movies, that just has really disappeared. Like I've seen recent movies where there's literally just like a piece of wafer furniture in a room. So I don't know what the budget was for this movie, but I just really appreciated it this time around.
I should know this, but Roald Dahl, is he like have a British or a European background?
Yeah, he's British.
Okay, so I think I love knowing that. I love the choice to make the Wormwoods house feel very like tacky Palm Springs esque. I feel like that really fits in with the characters. And believe it or not, I'm not one of those people who think that the book is always better than the movie. In my mind, I think that in this case, the book is better than the movie. But there are certain elements, and I think the set design and kind of some of the style choices for the Wormwood specifically are stronger in the movie.
It could also be, it's almost like overwhelming at times because there's so many things in their house, but I don't know, even to Kat's point about like the camera angles, I feel like the lighting that they make it very dark in their house. It's not warm at all. And then you have this contrast of like going to Miss Honey's like lit cottage with no lights. It's just like all natural lighting and flowers surrounding it. So it really checks out.
Everything is so tangible. Like I just remember as a kid watching this movie and you really felt like you were in it. Whereas some other movies, you really feel like you're watching a movie. Like you're right. Everything about this set made you feel like you were there. The lighting, the camera angles, the acting, all that attention to detail. I mean, it really created such an intense experience, like in the best way.
I want to go back to Miss Trunchbull a little bit more because one of my favorite things about recording these episodes is watching movies that I've seen 1,000 times and then going back and watching it as an adult. And I was petrified of her growing up, but like not enough that I wouldn't watch the movie. But she is so funny. I have so many subtle lines that I grew up saying and still do that are probably not like the most well known, but I made like a laundry list of all of the quotes that she has in this movie, so I'll save that. But it's just funny how you end up like gravitating towards different parts of the movies like as you get older. I'm curious if they had any like sit down with Pam, who plays Miss Trunchbull, like beforehand, and we're just like, do you have any ideas of the absurd lines that you can come up with that this teacher would say? Because I would assume that some of the things that she says in the movie, they don't have in the book. But I don't know if you can confirm, Michelle.
I was wondering that too, actually, because I was noticing on this rewatch how many nicknames there are, like even between Harry and Zinnia Wormwood, like they're always calling each other these like ridiculous names. And it could be like really sweet if they're talking to each other, but then like really horrible when they're talking to Matilda. And I'm like, are they taking this directly from the book, or was this added into the screenplay? I don't know.
I don't know. There were definitely things that stood out that I remembered that came directly from the book, but it's the ones that you just mentioned, like the nicknames and then some of Miss Trunchable's lines. I can't remember.
It's almost like all of the elements I was afraid of as a kid are now hilarious to me. Like the concept of the chokey and the fact that it's called the chokey is so funny. Like, who came up with this? It's horrifying, but it's really funny.
I'm still haunted by the chokey.
Still haunted. I feel like this movie was really bringing me back to also just to Kat's point. There's just like a lot of nostalgia of like watching this as a kid. So like the songs, the kind of scenes that stand out. So like the pancake making and the, you know, flying the poker chips around. But I think also like just speaking in the tone that this is like a back to school season, it also like made me remember the feelings that I had going to school the first day of school. I know that she kind of like enters midway through the year, but do you guys have any like favorite memories?
Yeah, I definitely remember spending ages picking out my like first day back to school outfit. Like that was a big deal.
Yeah, I feel like it's like this weird like first day of school feeling of nerves, but also like excited to put on your first outfits. Michelle, what was like your go-to? Because I feel like mine was always jeans and a white tee, like every year.
I don't feel like I have very many fashion memories. And if you go back and look at my first day of school outfits, it kind of shows. I think even though I was the oldest in our family, we had older cousins. So a lot of my clothes were hand-me-downs. And I think at the time when I should have started to become fashion conscious, I wasn't. And by that time, mom had 4 kids and just kind of like, she wasn't on top of it either. So I think I was a little bit of a mess in that department. And I don't have any specific first day of school memories like from a specific year. But I think I overall had a very similar feeling that Matilda did, just being really excited to go to school and excited to learn. I kind of feel like school was maybe not like from a social perspective, but if school was just about like going and like learning things, not that I was like a straight A student always, but I feel like it was a good environment. And if I could go back to school, if I could go to school for my whole life, I would.
I know. I do feel that at this age. I'm like, can I just go back and learn things and not have to work? That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I don't feel like we talked a lot about Miss Honey yet. And I just want to take a moment because she is everything that I think everyone wants in a teacher, but just as like a friend as well. And I think it was just a really strong casting choice. And I think one thing that I really appreciated, and I don't know if this was the ending of the book, but the fact that they didn't make her this character that was like, I need to meet a man and then like my family is whole at the end. Like they really just left it as this friendship between these two people who had such a connection and things that they were interested in, but also like both were looking for a family. So I really like appreciated that ending choice of them just living in the house together.
One thing I did wonder though was like, where are all the other teachers at the school? You know what I mean? Like, who are they and why are they there? Like, you understand once you find out that Miss Honey is Miss Trunchable's niece, why she has to be there. But I am very curious as to who else Miss Trunchbull is employing and why and how. Yeah. But Miss Honey, I mean, she is just, she's goals. That's who I try to channel when I'm in my classes. But
you're doing a great job. I wonder if it was almost like she, from Matilda's perspective, that like Miss Honey like was the only teacher because she was like so captivating in a way that she wasn't even thinking about the fact that there were other like rooms. But I did read that in the book they have Matilda move into like another class and she kind of like loses her powers a little bit because she's challenged a little bit more, which I thought was interesting. But I'm like, how do you just stay in Miss Honey's class throughout that entire elementary school experience? I wouldn't want to leave.
Well, you're saying exactly what they said, I think, kind of in the epilogue, that they had to kind of like expand the school because the students wanted to keep staying there with her.
Yeah.
Which is so cute.
Yeah.
I thought she was so lovely, even more than I remembered going back to set design. The way that her classroom was decorated, and I think on the chalkboard on the first day when Matilda came in, it said like word of the day was butterfly, and it was just this very like beautiful kind of like chalk drawing. It made me feel like just like rainbows exploding everywhere. But I also appreciated that she wasn't a complete pushover. That scene, this is more of a like, for a kid's movie, probably irrelevant and maybe even could have been cut. But from an adult perspective, I really loved and appreciated that scene where she went to the Wormwood's house and tried to kind of like reason with them. And I guess for expository sake, it was kind of her chance to like see where Matilda was coming from and understanding like what things were like for her at home. But I loved the way that she, really like pushed her way to get in and then tried her best to have a conversation with them. But then in her very Miss Honey way, understanding that she was never going to get through to these people, but then left that book for Matilda. I thought that everything that you needed to know about Miss Honey, like you could see, like at her core, you could see in that scene.
And the fact that her name is Miss Honey. I mean, Jennifer Honey. Great choice. Was that her name in the book, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like this is kind of like a Roald Dahl. One of the things he really excels in, and is kind of like a signature thing for him, is that all of the names are creative and help you get a sense of who the character is before you even read anything about them. And if you think about some of the characters in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, it's kind of the same thing, like Augustus Gloop and like Veruca Salt. It's all the names kind of like very much fit in with the characters, and Matilda is another like showpiece of that. I feel like there was a name I wanted to call out.
Lavender.
Hortensia.
Yeah, Hortensia.
Hortensia looked like she was in college.
She was 47. She was so tall, but I think it was one of those things where like they were, from her perspective, she's like, these kids are so much bigger. I always thought that, I think as I got older and continued to watch this movie, that Matilda just seemed older than the rest of the kids in her class, but I think that was probably intentional because she was so mature.
Well, also they like held her back. Like
I know.
For however many years, she was 6.5 by the time she
5
finally
then.
in kindergarten. So she would have been either like first or second grade and like starting in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Poor thing. I think just like going back to like the start of our conversation, there are so many amazing, excellent pieces that add in to make this movie what it is. But like at the core of it, being about an outcast is really, I think, what helps it stand the test of time, right? Like maybe you're not even an outcast in that like you feel like you're, wanting to be at home reading your books and, it's not the nerdy outcast, but maybe it's another kind of outcast. I mean, I think so many kids feel outcasted at some point in their lives. And so even if you don't necessarily relate to Matilda being uber smart, kids found a way to relate to her because we all feel that at some time or another, even if maybe it's with your parents at home. Maybe it's with friends who you thought were your friends and then turned out not to be. I think there's just so many instances that you can apply that. And I think of, another childhood favorite was Harry Potter for me. Again, it's like about this outcast child who finds their way through friendship and through magic. And yeah, I think that's part of why this story has really stood the test of time.
I also love that you brought up Harry Potter because as I was watching this last night, I kept thinking about Harry Potter, especially in the school scenes. I don't know if it influenced the Harry Potter series at all, but you can definitely see a little bit of overlap. And again, the Harry Potter universe also has really great character names.
Oh my gosh, yeah. For some reason, my mind is just going to Cookie, the
Yes.
school lunch lady, and Mr. Filch. I'm like, those
Yes.
two characters
Yes.
are the same.
I picture the two of them having a love affair and then they broke up and this is who they became. Like
Oh my
in another
God.
life. When I think of this movie, I don't really think as much about the superpowers. I like that that's kind of like part of the movie, but they don't make it the whole movie. There's all these other aspects that kind of like come together to make it really strong, but that is such a fun inclusion. Just like I always loved watching her like trying to move the cereal box and then like going into, you know, that really fun scene that I think is it really emulates this movie. But it's also like teaching kids to like find their superpower, whatever it is, to like make it through challenging times, which I think is it's just like it has a really good message. To your point, I think it just holds up really well. And I think for teachers, I think especially kind of what we were saying earlier, like if you can kind of find someone, whether it's a teacher or a friend, who can kind of like help bring out the best in you and like focus on your good attributes or the things that make you really happy, you need that support from adults or friends. All right, well, is there anything that we didn't like from this movie?
No notes.
I think the only thing that comes up is that I was afraid, like of the big dark house when I was young.
I actually do have one thing that I didn't like, and I never noticed it until this rewatch. The opening dialogue, the narrator, is Danny DeVito. And I was like, what? Harry Wormwood is narrating this movie? Like, that is so backwards because he's so evil and the narrator is so like gentle and sweet. So I feel like they should have picked somebody else. Like Danny DeVito, you already are directing, you already have the role as Harry Wormwood. Pick another narrator.
But
Even,
I don't know. Maybe the fact that you didn't notice it all this time shows that it worked. Because I had that thought also of I can't believe that you can't tell that he sounds like a completely different person. So the Harry Wormwood, he has a lot of like anger in his voice throughout this whole movie that you aren't able to put two and two together.
As an adult, I found it jarring.
Yeah. I thought you were going to bring up the fact that they don't have her carrier strapped in when she comes home from the hospital, which is also just as concerning.
But that's like so
But checks out to them.
Exactly. Makes sense for the movie.
Also, great baby casting. Just throwing it out there. Her facial expressions.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know. They must have done like a room read with the baby. Matilda 1 and Mara Wilson. I don't know. I wonder if all the Matildas keep in touch. Michelle, I feel like you have some notes.
I have some notes, but first I wanted to say that I liked the Danny DeVito narration. Maybe I'm like completely overthinking this, but I had the thought that maybe in him being the narrator was almost like a very subtle subconscious way to like make the kids, if they found that out, be like less afraid of him as Harry.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like maybe that's a stretch, but that's where my adult head went. It was like, oh, but like, you know, if you're trying to explain to a kid, like, don't be afraid of this movie, I feel like this is something I would say if I had a kid. I would say, like, you don't have to be afraid of him. Actually, do you know this voice that you're hearing? Like, that's the same guy. So stupid.
So good.
Okay. So things I didn't love. I think, first of all, this is a kids movie. It's a kids movie, and when I was watching it last night in the beginning, I was really invested, just kind of going down memory lane. But about halfway through, I picked my phone up and I was like started to be a little checked out. And I'm like, I get this. This is not for someone in their 40s to be watching. Aside from that, I feel like this is a pretty, like Harry Potter, a movie that is, or a story that should be kind of timeless. And I feel like overall they kind of did a good job with that, with like the style choices. But there were a couple instances that felt really 1996 to me, and it annoyed me that they couldn't just like get all of it right. Like, especially, I think that scene, like in the beginning, all like the hospital, coming home from the hospital, like all of that felt very of the time. And then we kind of like shift into this other mode of being in their house and then being at the school, and kind of like, Miss Honey and Miss Trunchbull's homes are very like, I don't know what year it is. I don't know where this is. And I like that aspect.
It felt like a storybook almost.
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I felt like I was a little distracted at points that like stylistically took me out of it.
Also, can either of you tell where they live? Because they show palm trees where the car dealership is, and it does give a Palm Springs vibe, but also could be Florida. So, but then Miss Honey and Miss Trunchbull's house feels like it could be in the South
New England, maybe.
or New England. So I have a feeling that they definitely shot this at different locations.
I think it was a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
But I think that the school, Miss Honey and Miss Trunchbull's, was a lot truer to the book. I think they took kind of like Matilda's home life in a different direction. But it was so funny that I kind of like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I didn't like, and I like hate that I'm like saying this, but I found Matilda kind of annoying. And maybe it's one of these, we've said this in other episodes, where like we're annoyed because it reminds us of ourselves. Like, I mean, she was smart, but she was also like a know-it-all. And there were points where I was like, just keep your mouth shut. Like, you don't need to say anything right now. But I think it's, probably just like me yelling at my young self.
It's okay. We're working through it, Michelle. But I agree.
Sponsored by BetterHelp. No, kidding. We're not.
This is true. All you youngins who are now getting over these childhood experiences. Yeah, I think I felt the same way, Kat. I don't know if you listened to or grew up watching It Takes Two, but I felt annoyed by the Olsen twins, who actually were up for the ticket to be cast in this, which would have been interesting.
Oh,
very different.
Wow.
Very different movie. But yeah, I think it's just I find it as the perspective of watching this as a kid. You're not really thinking about, like, you're watching Matilda as your peer almost, or like, I don't know. And just looking back, and again, I'm more tied to the Trunchbull aspect of this movie at this age. So I think it's just a part of growing up. Was there anything else, Michelle?
I don't know. The magic stuff, I kind of don't want to say, because it's a personal preference. And I think for a kid's movie, having it in there, especially like that, the scene where she's having the Cheerios and then she kind of like, when she really harnesses the magic, it's like such an iconic part of this movie. I feel like I'm ruining this story by saying this, but I almost feel like the story doesn't need the magic element at all. But I guess that would poke holes in her making the whole thing happen at the end. Yeah. So it couldn't. But I don't know. They were I don't know. I wasn't like all in on the magic stuff.
I think that you need it, but I think what you're saying is you're happy that it wasn't like the whole movie. Like, I don't know. I like that it was like a part of it, and there is like the magic and harnessing your powers, but it's not like there's just so many other good parts of this movie.
Yeah, I'll say I appreciate that they included this line at the very beginning about how we're, as humans, like we're only really using like a small portion of our brain power of like what's possible. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that very much checks out and is in alignment with Matilda's character, that from a very young age, she's like so much more advanced. So to believe that she's able to tap into this thing that no one else is definitely makes sense. And to my memory, I think at the very end, after she writes out the chalkboard message to Miss Trunchbull, I think after that, her powers kind of disappear in the book. But I'll have to fact check that. But I liked how in this interpretation in the movie, they said like she kind of didn't need it anymore except like for fun. Yeah. That was cute.
Yeah.
I think that ties back to like what you said earlier about, this being a story about an outcast and finding your own personal power. Like the magic really did seem like a metaphor, rather than something that was real. It was, a metaphor for finding your own personal power. It's nice that this movie leaned into it in a more subtle way.
One thing that I saw recently, which is just clear that I'm getting targeted with all the nostalgic content on Instagram, was that someone pointed out, which you can argue in so many different movies could be the case, but like Matilda is almost a like projection of Miss Honey. Like Miss Honey is like thinking of herself or like imagining like a child's version of herself, which I thought was an interesting perspective, which I had never thought about, obviously, as a kid.
Going back and reclaiming her past.
Yeah. It's pretty special.
I love that. The only connection I was kind of making is in thinking about their outfits, they did kind of wear the same types of kind of like the cardigan dress combo. I love that thought that this is kind of like her redemption / I mean, she can't go back in time and relive her life again, but like kind of through Matilda, she can.
Yeah.
She's healing her inner child.
Yes. Exactly. Sponsored by BetterHelp. All right. I've been really looking forward to this section the whole episode, so I'm just talking so fast. Kat, I'm going to start with you. Favorite scene, favorite quote. We don't have limits on this podcast, so you can have really multiple if you want.
Great. I do think just because it held such a strong memory for me as a child, that scene with Little Bitty Pretty One where she is learning her magic and has the poker chips flying all around her. I just remember that being the pinnacle of like, oh my God, I want to be Matilda. But then also on the rewatch, like, again, watching Matilda, this little girl, haunt Miss Trunchbull and like Magnus coming flying down the stairs and being hung above the fireplace while Miss Trunchbull's portrait burns in the fireplace. Like, just so iconic. And then, let me get 2 of those chocolates to boot. But the lines, so going back to like, the nicknames that we were talking about earlier, I couldn't even write all of them down because there were so many. But I have bumpkins, schnookums, lying little earwing, squirming worm of vomit, villainous sack of goat slime. And then when she's looking at the portrait of Miss Trunchbull, she goes, whoever painted the Trunchbull must have had a strong stomach. A really strong stomach. Miss Trunchbull on the phone to Harry Wormwood after her car is breaking down. She goes,
I'm gonna sue you, I'm gonna burn down your showroom, I'm gonna take that no-good jalopy you sold me and shove it up your bazooka! When I finish with you, you're gonna look like roadkill!
These lines are incredible. I shall personally see to it that the demented, drooling, slime-breathed Lilliputian who owns this disgusting ribbon will never see the light of day again.
While we're on the Trunchbull train of amazing quotes, I'm just going to continue to add on to Kat's because they're just so
Please
good.
do.
You festering ball of pus. She says, a vicious little sneak thief. Also, the fact that she refers to Matilda, she goes, her father says she's a real wart.
I liked when she said, you're too small, grow up quicker.
Yes.
And I love, this is one that Laura, I don't know if you remember this, but this is one I remember repeating over and over again with our cousins. The whole scene with Amanda Thripp.
What are those?
What's what, Miss Trunchbull?
Hanging down by your ears.
You mean my pigtails?
Are you a pig, Amanda?
No, Miss Trunchbull.
Do I allow pigs in my school?
The way she changes her voice too is so good. She uses it
into
so
a kid.
Different. Yeah, it's incredible.
I love how she talks down to the kids.
My mommy thinks they're sweet.
Your mommy is a twit.
Just a quick side note, also relating to Harry Potter, she plays Aunt Marge in Harry Potter. Who gets blown up. Yeah, so
she's so evil.
No idea.
And she has the same kind of like demeanor. She really does. The way that her voice gets smaller. So like she goes from, who was wearing a pretty red ribbon yesterday and isn't wearing one today? And then she goes, disgusting. 0 to 10 so quickly.
I also love the difficulty poem when she goes, a poem? What poem would that be? And I love that she's so angered by, why are all these women married?
Yes.
And then
Tally ho.
I feel like this is also something that I think sometimes when I hear noises, just
Who's in my house?
tally ho that followed that just fits in with all the things that I loved about her. All the scenes where she's in her house are so good.
So good.
In her domain.
Her barking at the cat.
Really good bark. Really good bark. Really
She
realistic.
convinced me.
Kat, do you have any other favorite lines aside from Trunchbull ones?
When Harry Wormwood comes out with his hair bleached, and it's like it's not just the line. You're right, Michelle. It's like, it's the delivery, it's the blocking. Like, what does she have? An entire bowl of M&Ms in her hand? Like, she's going to serve that for breakfast as if it's cereal? But she turns around, she goes,
Here we are, my heartstrings. Snickerdoodle, what did you do to your hair?
Michelle, do you have a favorite scene?
Yes, I do. The scene where they have to cut the hat off of Harry's head, or I thought it was so funny. It probably went on like a little long, but like I wanted it to keep going just because I couldn't stop laughing. And I feel like that's kind of like a sister scene to the, the reveal that his hair is dyed. The two of them play off each other so well because, like Kat mentioned, like that they have all of these pet names, but they also like have so much resentment towards each other. It's a really great dynamic. How about you, Laura? What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite scene or multiple favorite scenes?
So many favorite scenes. I honestly think, as scary as it is, the entire section of them breaking into her house is like, it has me on the edge of my seat every time. I'm like, oh my God, they have to go down the back pantry. She hears a noise. She throws the shot put down the stairs. It's really exciting. And I think as a kid, like, you were afraid, but you were also like, oh my gosh, are they really going to get away? It always felt really long, like all the way up to the point where she gets so frustrated that she's just slinging the shot put around the garden. But I think it's a really exciting part of the movie. The fact that she's hiding under the kitchen table and you see the shadow, but then uses her powers to go up. And we kind of talked about this earlier, which doesn't even have the older Matilda, but I always felt like the library scene was really sweet because just like the older librarian, and they cut to like her giggling in the children's book section. I always think that's really sweet. I wouldn't say maybe these are my favorite scenes, but Michelle, you kind of talked about these earlier. Like, they're definitely the most comedic are Amanda and that whole dialogue of asking her if she's a pig and like throwing her by her pigtails. But my mommy thinks they're sweet. I love the design choice for Amanda, that she just has like a pink little jumpsuit on and she's so adorable. Both scenes where Miss Trunchbull comes into their class to teach are really funny. And Lavender's so sweet, and just like the dialogue of her bringing her water and she's like, shoo. She like makes her go back to her desk. If I had to go to favorite lines, when Harry's hat shrinks and he's like,
I did not glue my hat to my head. The hat shrunk, the fibers fused to my hair.
I always joke with Lisa now that she has 3 kids, and she goes, I'm in a cage, Harry. I need to talk to people beside these stupid kids. We haven't talked about the ace powerboat salesman, but that entire scene where Zinnia's in the living room with them and he comes home and Harry goes, what's this, a hot tub party? And I love this line, and I feel like it really connects with me as an adult. But towards the end, when Harry says, I can't think with all these sirens, because like the police are coming after him. Yeah, I think if I could just sit and listen to Harry and Zinnia and Trunchbull quotes for a day, it would dramatically make my day better. We want to hear from the listeners. What is your favorite Trunchbull quotes? All right, let's get into our favorite food sections. Kat, you mentioned the Cheerios scene earlier and the pancakes, but what does this movie really make you want to eat?
You know, I can tell you what this movie makes me not want to eat, and that's cookies chocolate cake.
Yes.
I love chocolate cake, but that scene makes me never want to have chocolate cake again.
Mhm.
It makes me never want to have TV dinners. But I do think it really makes me want to have another tea party. You know, like the scenes where Miss Honey or Matilda first goes over to Miss Honey's cottage and she's just serving tea to a 6-year-old. Like, who does that?
So
And then the
sweet.
final scene when she's sitting on the front porch with her and she ends up adopting her. They've got all these cute little, like, cookies and scones and things. And the way Zinnia just takes them, dumps it into her purse. It's like, we'll take it to go.
And Michelle, I have not shown you photos of Kat's tea parties, but they are the Miss Honey cottage scenes. But in
I'm
Kat's
so
house.
jealous.
We really should have fitted into our itinerary this time around. I don't know what I was thinking. I think that Kat had it like the week after you left. So we'll time it better next time. Sure. Michelle, anything stick out for you?
Yeah, I think I wanted all the breakfast things. I'm not usually like a big breakfast girl, but I wanted Cheerios and I wanted pancakes and I wanted Eggo waffles, which I haven't had in forever. But there are a lot of food sightings. I usually try to just kind of like keep a running log when I'm watching, and I felt like they were coming so fast that I couldn't keep up with it. Just like a lot of like kind of trashy snacks. There was something that they were eating in the Wormwood house that I hadn't heard of before until I have this puzzle of foods from like the 50s and 60s. And one of them is called Fiddle Faddle, which is, I think, maybe like Cracker Jacks, but they were eating it in the Wormwood house, I think, with like cans of Budweiser. So that was one of the things that I
the
flagged
fact
that I couldn't
Zinnia
remember.
Was
drinking with a straw.
Yes.
Like, name a better pairing of a character with a drink that they would be drinking. Because
The Budweiser out of a straw.
with a straw. In the middle of the
Iconic.
day. It was like not after work. I don't know when it was. So good.
Oh
Do you
my
find
God.
it odd that she didn't smoke?
Yes.
Mm,
I wonder
yeah.
if they couldn't because it's like a kid's movie.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Is that a
I
thing?
almost, this is probably like on this year that this movie was made, was probably on the line of when they were becoming more conscious about things like that. But I feel like if this was made like in 1986,
Forget about it.
I would
Chain
hope that there
smoking.
would just be like clouds
Yeah.
of smoke in their whole house.
They made the house look smoky without
Yes.
smoking. So it checks
Exactly.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Bud Light with the straw, probably one of the better creative choices for this movie.
Right. So subtle, but so important. Like,
So important.
Yes.
And to your point, I always thought they were Skittles. I
Oh,
would
maybe
think
they
of
were
them eating
Skittles,
Skittles
yeah.
because they thought that like the Skittles would be more healthy than M&Ms
It's
in the
fruit.
morning. It's fruit. Yeah. You got to eat the rainbow.
Also, every time at the beginning of the movie that Zinnia's leaving and she's like, there's fish sticks in the microwave. All these disgusting things.
Soup
Like,
on the stove.
yeah.
And it's just like a can, an open can in a pot.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh, thanks, Mom. What about you, Laura? What did this film make you want to eat?
To your point, definitely not TV dinners. I don't think I've ever had a TV dinner ever, but maybe I have to try it out and see what the hype's about. I will say, not that I don't do this, but I did have like leftover lasagna sitting on my couch yesterday watching a TV show, and it's really nice like eating dinner on a couch sometimes. I do that a
there's
lot when I
nothing
go
wrong
to
with
Michelle's
that.
house, and it's pretty wonderful. It's an aesthetic. Yeah, I think my parents like wouldn't buy us bad cereal, and we definitely like have talked about this on the podcast a lot. I think I was never a big Cheerios person. I think it was just like, oh, if Cheerios are around, I definitely preferred Honey Nut Cheerios. But do you guys both have a favorite cereal growing up?
Honey Nut Cheerios, and is still my adult favorite. I get
Yeah.
it every once in a while as like a treat.
I also wasn't allowed to have those like sugary cereals or anything like that. So there was not a ton in the house, but like when I would go over to friends' houses, I loved having like Lucky Charms. And then that became like my kryptonite in college because you have this like incredible dining hall where you can eat anything. And I was like, I'm just going to eat Lucky Charms for dinner.
Every
So,
day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always a Frosted Mini Wheats fan. I just like any cereals that like when they make the milk sweet. So good. But yeah, I'm actually surprised that she wasn't given like Cocoa Puffs or something. I wonder if it was a Cheerios was a product placement for heart
maybe.
health
Could
back
be.
in the day. But yeah, I think when I think of the food in this movie, it's not really as much about what I want to eat, but like how perfect the choices were. Like even the fact that like Miss Honey does tea parties is very on character. I want that cottage. All right, should we get into our dinner party? Michelle, what do you think that we should do this episode? A TV dinner kind of feels right.
That's kind of what I was thinking, was TV dinner.
Yeah. But are we, is it like a potluck style where people are bringing their own items and we're sharing in front of the TV?
We could kind of like each have a little portion for the tray.
Yeah. Okay, so we're each going to give each other someone. So Kat, I'll give you someone, you give Michelle someone, Michelle will give me someone. Kat, I'm going to give you Amanda Thripp because I would want her at my dinner party. She was so wonderful.
Michelle, I'm so sorry, but I've got to give you Cookie. I need to know what Cookie's bringing.
This is so good.
Pressure's on. We have a professional chef has entered the building. Okay.
You need something to spice this party up.
All right, this is off the rails and a little bit of a repeat of something that we did in the Cinderella story episode, but I'm going to give you the ghost of Magnus.
Like, just like the self-portrait.
Like the painting, you're going to open up the front door of the Wormwood's house and it's going to come flying in and he'll sit in one of the recliners.
We'll give him the nicest chair because he needs the most support.
He needs
it's
breadth,
a big
like
frame.
Yes,
It's a really big frame. What a guest list.
Poor Amanda.
Poor Amanda.
She will definitely need therapy after this.
Sponsored by BetterHelp.
We really love therapy, guys.
We love therapy. All right. Kat, what is Amanda Thripp bringing to the dinner table tray?
I feel like Amanda is a simple gal. She's probably bringing like a grilled cheese, but like made with American cheese. It's white Wonder Bread. And she's probably bringing like one of those hostess type desserts, like a ring ding or a Twinkie. That's like, she's got her grilled cheese and then the hostess little donut snack to finish it off. That's what she's bringing to the party.
Absolutely fantastic pairing.
Yeah,
that is an Amanda Thripp meal.
And
I also
milk for dinner, like that's
TV
the
dinner.
drink that she's bringing for everyone is milk.
Yes, whole milk. Kat and I were actually having this discussion this week in our friend group chat about whole milk is back. Enough with the oat milk and all these all these healthy milks that have transformed over the last 10 years. And you know what's funny? I just need to go on a tangent. Every time that I go to get a coffee, they're like, would you like some oat milk? I'm like, why don't you start with regular milk or half and half is the question. Why is it always oat milk now?
Because you live in Los Angeles.
I know, but come on. Bringing back up milk ads and bringing back big milk.
Yeah.
Laura, we really need to pitch big milk because I feel like you bring this up every week. You're very passionate about it.
I'm passionate about the fact that I just want normal milk in my coffee.
And I support it. I support it. I mean, I'm like a half and half girl in my coffee. So I say like, let's go for it.
Yeah.
We would be good advocates for them.
Yes. All right. But Amanda Thripp is definitely, she's not drinking 2%. She's full
she's
fat.
bringing whole milk.
Whole milk.
Grilled cheese.
Perfect pairing with a ring ding.
This is great.
Well. And she's a sharer. Like I could see her like sharing with Lavender at the lunch table. Like, would you like half of my ring ding? You know?
Yep.
She's a sweet girl. Great dinner party guest. Michelle, what is Cookie bringing to this party?
Okay. I don't want to be too on point because I have this very specific vision in my head and I'm wondering if it's actually in the movie. But I'm picturing her with one of those extremely large stock like soup pots. With two handles on it that's like, like this tall. And I'm picturing her making one of those soups that I think restaurants kind of do this sometimes, like at the end of the week where they just throw in every leftover that they have. But I don't think that she holds back. Like she takes it very literally. She opens their ice box or their fridge and takes out whatever's in there, like including like, I'm imagining like bones, animal parts that shouldn't be in there, vegetable like scraps. So like, you know, like if you were to like peel a carrot, like she would throw the carrot peels in there. And I feel like this is the most essential ingredient. I'm imagining her like sweating into the soup pot as well. So that all gets stirred. Yes.
Yeah.
That all gets stirred in. And I think that this would be a great accompaniment to like a grilled cheese. And she's going to think it's great. She's going to be like, Amanda, you brought grilled cheese? Perfect. Because I have got so much soup to go with it. And I think that she just comes in with the pot, and I don't think anything else. I don't know. I mean, unless maybe she makes another chocolate cake, but I kind of got the sense that it was like a thing that she just made that for Miss Trunchbull. That was kind of like her go-to request, but she never made it for the kids.
Guess not.
I think you're right. It's just like I think Miss Trunchbull like pays her on the side for these chocolate cakes.
Okay.
Yeah, she eats the chocolate cake at her house too. So clearly she's making her delicious chocolate cake every day.
Well, maybe you guys can help with this then. If she has to make that for Miss Trunchbull, do we think that Cookie actually may be a great pastry chef? And if so, what would be her favorite if she got to pick what she would want to make and bring? That would actually be good.
I'm really leaning into this story though. Like Filch breaks her heart and she like starts a bakery in town.
It's like
and she retires and becomes the school lunch lady. I think that she loves cakes. Like I think that I could see her like when just picturing like young Cookie, like she was really good at making like carrot cake, like, and she made it like really pretty, you know, and then she just became bitter after Filch broke her heart.
Yeah, I think she loves scones, but she won't make them anymore because they remind her of Filch because they're
that was like
That's perfect.
It was like his favorite. He loved scones, just the plain ones though, with like a little jam. Okay. I feel so strongly about this. So Magnus, he wants like his meal, like his favorite meal, like before he passed away. You know, he's like, I really miss this. And I think he associates it with like great dinners that he had with Jenny when he was a doctor, so he had long hours at the office. So he needed something that was like prepared but ready for him when he got home. And I could see him as like a casserole guy. So maybe like a green bean casserole. Like this just feels right with him, but also like loves just a really good like chicken thigh, like a baked chicken thigh and a green bean casserole. So he's flying in his frame, and he has his green bean casserole covered in foil and his baked chicken legs. And these are great additions, I would say, to the grilled cheese and the soup. He's like pleasantly surprised by that he gets these other potluck items as well, because he hasn't eaten in a while. And he also brings his chocolate box because everyone deserves like he has like takeaway chocolate boxes for everyone when they leave the dinner party. Or Magnus. I lost one too soon. Did you guys know that that's actually a portrait of Roald Dahl, like when he's younger?
I didn't. That's amazing.
Shout out to the BuzzFeed article I read before this.
I think we read the same one.
What a dinner party. Probably my favorite dinner party next to our Jurassic Park episode. Just what an eclectic group. I also am just adding on to the Cookie Filch plotline that maybe Amanda Thripp is like their granddaughter, because there's all these like secret family connections at the school, and like she doesn't know, and this is like a chance for her and Cookie to bond. Like it's like her estranged granddaughter.
Oh my gosh, incredible.
The child ended up with Filch.
Guys, we just wrote the weirdest fanfic.
We just wrote the great American novel. What are you talking about? I mean, we'll get the Harry Potter and the Matilda fans in one place. The spookiness of their school has similar vibes to like the corridors of Hogwarts, so I could see it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a satellite campus for Hogwarts.
Like kids who, and You know, there could be other kids who they need practice with their magic before they get to the next
Exactly.
level.
Yeah, Matilda's not 11 yet, so.
Yeah,
Great point.
she's almost there. Let's get into our this or that section. Kat, pancakes or Cheerios?
Pancakes, 100%.
Plain pancakes, or are you a chocolate chip or a blueberry gal?
I really love a blueberry pancake, but if I'm at a diner, you got to go chocolate chip. You know what I mean?
Always. A share for the table?
A
Nothing
share
better.
from the table, of
I feel
course.
bad because I could see Matilda as a blueberry girl, but I don't think that the Wormwoods have ever bought fruit for their home.
No, she would have to put
unfortunately.
Skittles.
Yeah, always. Okay. Would you rather get locked in the chokey or get caught in Miss Trunchbull's house?
Probably get locked in the chokey because if I'm caught at Mitch Trunchbull's house, I'm going to end up in the chokey either way.
This is true. Even after hours, she would get the school bus and bring you back to the chokey. So
No, she probably has a personal one in her house too.
definitely. I mean, her basement is the chokey, but just bigger. Would you rather eat the entire confection or get a hat glued to your head? Super glued to your head.
I'd rather get the hat glued to my head, I think. That entire
Five is a fuse to the hand.
The five is the fused, but my hair will grow back.
And last of my questions, would you rather be a used car salesman, like selling awful cars to good people, or be a principal like Miss Trunchbull?
Oh. Oh gosh.
Like not a nice principal, a bad
used
one.
door salesman because at least they're adults that you're screwing over and not little kids.
This speaks to Kat's character. Love
I
it.
definitely had some overlap with you. Not the same matchups, but similar like concepts.
Love.
Michelle, would you rather eat the entire confection, a whole cake made by Cookie and her sweat, or be locked in the chokey all day?
Probably eat the cake.
The entire confection.
Well,
It's
the
a big
chokey
confection.
is scary for a whole day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm just
This
thinking
is
about
true.
your poor stomach. Okay, would you rather have to go on the Sticky Mickey money game show or get your hat glued to your head?
I think go on the game show.
Would you rather have a slice of chocolate cake, regular, doesn't have to be cookies, or have a chocolate from Father's chocolate box?
Oh, I think I still would go for the cake. I'm not usually like a big chocolate cake kind of person, but a slice of cake over just like a chocolate, I think I would pick the cake.
Okay, my last one is, would you rather have a tea party with Miss Honey or have Matilda's magical powers for a day?
I think I'd rather just have a tea party with Miss Honey. I feel like anything that I would do magically, the tea party would be better. All right, Laura, I have a lot of crossover to what we've already done, but in slightly different ways. Would you rather spend an hour in the chokey or go to work with Harry for an entire week?
Go to work with Harry. I would just play tricks on him the whole time. I would glue things to his head. I would mess with things to make his day miserable. So I'd make fun out of it.
Would you rather be javelin thrown by your pigtails or be on the $1 million sticky?
Definitely the $1 million sticky. That looks so painful.
Now, would you not want to do it, even knowing if it would end in the same way with her kind of like gliding through the flower fields very gently? Fun. It seems like a nice approach at the end.
She got some flowers at the end. I scooped these up for you, Miss Honey. No, I don't know. It seems really painful. Like the actual throwing, I feel like her head was hurting. But then, I don't know, Miss Honey did her hair really nice and she took out her braids, so.
But that fear of not knowing if you were going to make the fence.
The fence is so spiky. It's so spiky. Every time I'm like, is she going to make it? Is she going to make it over it? I don't know. We just don't know.
All right. And last one. Would you rather eat an entire Bruce Bogtrotter cake or drink a pitcher of newt water that Trunchbull has already taken a gulp from?
Oh, I still think drink the newt water. Like that cake is big. I don't think it's just the fisheye. That is a big cake. I have a little tummy. There's only so much that I can eat. I love eating, but I wouldn't make it through a quarter of that cake. I think I would bring a little Miss Honey tissue and wipe the side of the glass and just hope that the newt didn't get in my mouth. Also,
Yes.
the pitcher that they pick, the pitcher that Lavender fills up is like, it's really intense. Like it feels very just, again, on brand for the scenes.
Clearly that is the kind of picture that Miss Trunchbull likes, because she's got the same exact one in her office, in her principal office, and she has another version of it in each classroom, I'm assuming, because there's one in Miss Sunny's classroom. Like, she's like, no, it has to be pewter. And
I'm kind of surprised they didn't make her like drink some specific beverage, like aside from water, but I guess water checks out. She like has to,
she's fit.
yeah, she has to stay fit for javelin throwing. What a wonderful episode, Kat. You're definitely welcome back. We can't thank you enough.
We're down to our final 2 episodes of the season, and we hope that you have been enjoying everything that we have shared so far. If you missed any of the episodes, you can get caught up on all the films that we've covered in our school series by clicking on season 7. Next week, we're going to be chatting about one of my personal favorite movies, Can't Hardly Wait. As Laura loves to say, it's not exactly an Oscar winner, but it is filled with a lot of 90s nostalgia, and it's going to be a fun conversation. So grab your popcorn, make sure you're subscribed, and we'll see you then.